Welcome to the Metal Reviews channel. I'm your host, Tom McKay, and today I'm here to answer the burning question that has plagued the metal community for a long time. I'm talking nearly 30 years worth of plague. It has to do with the band Metallica and this album, and Justice for All. It sounds like this story was done to death, but it's still something that lingers on the internet, from frustration to confusion to straight up memes.
This is why memes were part of my balanced breakfast.
But seriously, this has been a lingering problem in the metal community since it came out in 1988, and everyone quickly noticed the lack of the low end, the lack of the bass guitar, the lack of Newstead, and no one seems to know why. No one could find the answer to this question. But now, we actually have an answer to that question. We finally have an answer to the question of what happened to the bass in And Justice for All. We have the one answer that can reveal all the problems with this album and all of the problems that have plagued this band for 30 years. And that solution somehow morphs into three. Nothing is ever that simple, is it? In the quest to make the lives of those trying to find out the secrets to this problem much easier, like me, that's never just one core reason. There's bound to be someone to give a different story than the others. So through research, I found that there were three main answers given. There was one from Jason Newstead, the guy who got screwed over on this album, James Hetfield himself, and Steve Thompson, the mixer for this album. So the three stories can be summed up like this. Jason thinks that the bass and the guitar are sitting on the same frequencies, and they're hidden because Jason was basically mirroring what James was playing on the guitar. James claims that the high end was turned up all the way, and Steve, well, he says that Lars wanted the bass turned down all the way. So basically what you're saying is, I can end this video at the 2-minute mark by saying, these guys have every reason to lie, this guy has no reason to lie, and this guy was in pure denial. Thanks so much for watching. Click subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you in the mosh pit next time. Have a good night. No. I can't. All right, I can't do that because I'm in too deep here. All right, I'm in too deep with this one. I did my research, I did some digging, and I concluded experiments to find the answer. And after not just days, not just weeks, but whole minutes of trying, I think I found the answer. So let's find out more. To find out who was truly lying, I decided to test out our three different stories and find out which one holds up. Now I did this by heading into my workstation and messing around with one of the songs for a future music project that I'm working on. What I'm looking at here is we have drums, we have the bass, and we have our guitars. Now, in this instance, the bass player decided to be a dick. We were at a bar, we were all chilling, I got a pitcher of beer, and as I was about to drink it, the motherfucker snatched it out of my hand and chugged the whole thing right in front of me. I could only sit there and watch as he downed the entire thing. What I decided to do to get payback is to fuck with his bass. I'll play it for you the way it's put together right now. It's not horrible, it's not too bad, but the bass player's a dick, and we can hear him. So, I want to fuck with his bass. After I got my results, I then had to confirm these theories through a series of different experiments. Because the complication is, no speakers are ever made equal. Every speaker hears different frequencies, and others can't. So, you could probably pick up on different audio frequencies using your massive subwoofer that I can with my cheap headphones. So to truly be definitive with this, I mixed down each version and played them through different speakers, such as my headphones, my car speakers, laptop speakers, and my phone speaker. Now you might not be able to hear any of the differences that I would be hearing because every piece of audio that I'd be playing on my end would not translate the same in the recording. So you're gonna have to take my word for it, but if you want to test it out for yourself, I've linked all full versions of all the tests in the description below for you to check out for yourself. And let me know how they go. But with these rules set up, here's what I found. To start off, I wanted to test out Jason Newsted's theory about the whole thing. In an interview, he claimed that on top of the bass basically mirroring the guitar note by note, the bass and the guitars were fighting for frequencies, as they shared the same space. What we could do for this is we're going to move them to the same frequencies. And seeing as they're playing a similar riff, we already got to check on that one. So right now, this is putting more emphasis on getting rid of a bit of that mid range and getting a bit more of that high end removed. So, what are the guitars doing? Well, looks like they're not doing too much. Let's test this out. Let's get this guitar EQ. Fuck you, Joey. And we head back to our bass amp, head to the EQ. Guitar EQ, fuck you, Joey. Now we have the same frequency going on for all of this. Yeah, okay, so admittedly, I may have gone a little extreme here. Obviously, Jason didn't actually mean that they had the same EQ, but with how extreme this is, theoretically, based on what we were told, we shouldn't hear any more low end. And on top of that, we also shouldn't hear the bass guitar at all. So is that what we hear? Let's hear how this sounds. Huh? So it sounds like we are fairly close to our goal with this one. The low end is practically gone when listening through my headphones, and it's taken up more by the kick and the low toms. Even when listening in my car, with the bass booster on, there was no low end on that bass guitar, and the other scenarios went more or less the same way. However, in the end, that's not what's happening here. What we're hearing in that album is that there's little to no low end whatsoever. All the low end has been pushed to the low toms and the kick, all from the drums. And the bass guitar is not heard whatsoever. But in this case, while it is very quiet, it's still audible. So it's still audible. That's not the effect we were looking at, so we can consider this theory, you know, close but debunked. So this next one is actually the reason I wanted to make this video in the first place. Because, no joke, when I first heard this, I thought it was pure bullshit pulled straight out of Ferdinand's ass. James Hetfield went on record recently to say that it more had to do with the fact that they were producing it as well, and they were doing it in between playing shows, saying, quote, "We were burnt. We were freaking fried, you know, going back and forth between touring and mixing the album, playing a gig, no earplugs, no nothing. You go back into the studio and your hearing is shot. If your ears can't hear any high end anymore, you're gonna turn it up. So we're turning the high end up more and more and more, and all of a sudden, low end's gone." Okay, so you know what? On paper, that actually sounds a little legitimate. You know, when you're playing shows with no hearing plugs or like earplugs whatsoever, you're going to lose a bit of hearing in your ears. You're going to lose a bit of the frequencies. So when you're in the studio and you're trying to mix, you can't hear some of those frequencies, then yeah, if you want to hear them, you're going to turn them up a little bit. So that does make a bit of sense, except, you know, one thing in particular, that's not how frequencies work. If you're confused, I'm just going to let Mixer Me walk you through what I'm talking about. Because they basically turned the high frequencies up so much that you couldn't hear any more low end. So that would require, probably, in theory, a lot of high end being turned up. I'm going to get a couple more EQs. I'm going to use a different one, just because we're in digital age right now. But this was made in the age of before digital. So, going to go back to vintage, and we turned up a lot of that high end. So around 3.8, we'll go for like around here. Yeah, we'll do that. And we're going to crank it up. We're going to take this, we're going to crank it up. Now we're going to do another one. We're going to crank it up and crank it up. Again, crank it up and crank it up. This should really fuck with the bass. Well, let's find out what is actually going to happen. So we ready? This is going to suck for my ears, isn't it? Just in case, we're going to just turn up these high frequencies and see what happens. Oh my god. Let's turn this up too. We're gonna get rid of that high pass. See what happens. Okay, so something clearly went wrong here, because not only is the low end still there, but now the bass guitar itself is more present than ever. So here's the thing, when we turned up those high frequencies and touched nothing else on the EQ, that's all we were doing. We didn't touch that low end. The low end remained the same all throughout, because James never said anything about doing that. He said the low end being gone was a consequence of the high end being ever more present. So we should only be focusing on the higher frequencies, and that's all that should be there. But not only did the low end remain in the mix, the high end is blaring so loud you can barely hear the rest of the instruments. Now there are no vocals on this track, but I bet if there were, we wouldn't be able to hear those either. Seriously, this method didn't even create a Justice for All. All it did was create noisecore, which is the exact opposite of what we were trying to do. So indeed, we can consider this theory debunked. Oh, if you were wondering how those sound tests went, well, they basically went as well as you expected. So we just heard two theories, crash and burn, all illegitimate. Could there possibly be any hope for this last one? The final answer comes from Steve Thompson, the guy who did mixing on Injustice for All. And here's what he had to say.
And he goes, okay, now the bass. I said, great part. All right, I want you to drop the bass level down in the mix where you barely audibly can hear it. I thought it was a joke. So I did that. And then they said, all right, drop it down another 6 to 8 dB. I understand. It's their record. It's not my record. But I was so pissed off the way this was sounding, I called up my managers and I said, I love this band, but their direction I'm not going to be happy with. Find somebody else to do this record. And at the time, Cliff Bernstein and Peter Mensch were managing the band. They talked us into staying with it and everything like that. And I'm saying to myself, why are you doing this?
That actually sounds the most realistic. Let's try it. All we're doing is dropping the volume until you can barely audibly hear it in the final mix. And then drop it another 6 to 8 dB. So that's what we're going to do right now. And voila! It looks like we can't hear the bass anymore. Let's double check. What do you know? Lars is a drama queen! We knew it! And now, let's check in on our tests. I got no bass on my end.
Hey, there we go. No bass.
No bass. There's no bass guitar whatsoever. So it looks like Steve Thompson was right all along. And you know what? I really do hope this discussion is put to bed. But if you want to test out the theories for yourself, let me know in the comments what you think. But also, the full versions of the tests are in the description below for you to check out for yourself using your own speakers. But I know what I'm taking away from this personally, and that is that Lars is indeed a drama queen. But given his past behavior and his history with Napster and Saint Anger, you know, all I can say is, what did you expect? Thanks so much for watching. Click subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you in the mosh pit next time. Have a good night.